Hello, good evening. It's a little. I'm pausing because it seems a little bit dark. I haven't done a trailer or anything this evening, so I'm hoping that people know that this is on, and also I'm going to check as well. Hence why I'm looking in that direction. I'm just going to check that it's all going live and okay. And let me see. Yeah, there we go. So, oi, 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 lovely. Becky, nice to see you. I've just seen that you've left me another message, so I was just checking on there. So, sorry, I had my head looked away. I was just checking that this was going live, but now there's people on, I can see that it is. So, good evening. Please do as Becky has and say hi, just so I can give you a shout out. And let's see who's on board this evening. It was quite funny. I was talking at a conference last week, and one of the organisers said to me, "I do watch your things. I just haven't plucked up the courage yet to say hi." So you know who you are. If you're watching live, come on, I dare you, say hi. That's all I'm going to do is say hi. So just remembering that for those of you, if you've never watched live before, this is live. Yes, I will fiddle with my hair. And this evening's confidence conversation is going to be about love. And I thought it'd be really apt to talk about love. It's actually something that I've wanted to, hi Alyssa, wanted to talk about because obviously it's St. Valentine's Day tomorrow. And my office is in the centre of town, and I noticed that when I walk, I have to walk obviously past quite a lot of shops or shemops, as I was about to say. Don't know what shemop is. And I obviously noticed the seasons changing and what we're being told to buy, and that we obviously desperately need in our lives. Lots of plastic hearts, apparently. At this moment of time, and I do find it fascinating, this nudge that we get as to what we should have and how we should be expressing ourselves, and what love in particular at this time of year looks like. And I thought I'd bring that to the table this evening to have that kind of conversation really, and see what your thoughts are. And if I say to you, well, you tell me, what do you think about when you think about love? What is it that springs to mind? Because I know that for a number of people, it comes up in different ways as to what love is and how they experience it, what they perceive it is, how they interact with it. Some people crave it. And I noticed that on all of these shops as I go past, that so many of them say that it's you show him love in certain ways. For example, so show him love by buying him aftershave, or show him love by buying him underwear, or show her love by buying her roses or chocolates or wine. And it's interesting because even you may or may not know, you may or may not be interested. Hi Bev, that I'm single at this moment in time and have been for quite a while, and I do find it fascinating that this message that goes out to the world, really, pretty much most people that live in any form of commercial society, gets told that the only thing that shows a woman, for example, that you love them is by buying them flowers or chocolates or wine. And if you don't do that, you obviously didn't love them. Or if you don't buy them the card, that you obviously didn't love them. And I just have been thinking about it myself, because I think my personal view is I think we have a misunderstanding as to what love is, and also how to get it. Hi, Laura. Well done. So Becky said parenthood nowadays anyway. But what does love mean to you? What is love? it's one of those things that I love it when scientists kind of go on about needing to quantify so many things. And yet one of those things that we still are unable to really locate as to what it is. We know that certain chemicals are released in our brains and in our bodies when we think we're in love or we see something we love. We know that obviously when, for the majority of people, when they have a child, oxytocin is released, which covers up all the pain. But it's like a hit of something that you would not be able to buy on the streets. And it's legal and it's there for a reason, which is it's nature's way of flooding the mum in particular with all of this love to make sure that she takes care of this tiny little thing that can't look after itself. But I suppose what I really want to talk about and invite to the table, regardless of your situation, regardless of whether you are a parent, regardless of whether you are in a relationship or whether you're single, I would love to know when the last time was that you were loving towards yourself. When were you last loving towards yourself? And what do you think that is? Because I had this really interesting conversation with a lady the other day who said, but I'm always treating myself. You know, since I got the house on my own and and the kids have gone off to university and left home, that I'm always loving and kind to myself. I treat myself. And I said, that's interesting. What do you mean by that? And she said, well, you know, I'll treat myself to whatever I want for dinner, or I'll treat myself to time in the bath, or I'll treat myself to reading or sitting around all day in pajamas. And I said, that's really lovely. And there are so many of us I know that could do with doing some of that. But that's kind of the not sort of loving I mean. And even Becky's put today with a box of Maltesers. It's interesting that so often we assume that being loving relates to us doing something. And quite often we think that relates in us doing something external. So it's a treat, or it's that kind of thing where we spend more time looking outside of ourselves. And I'm just wondering if you could take a moment right now and think about love, and more specific, the act of being loving. So loving as a verb. When was the last time that you thought a loving, honestly loving, kind thought about yourself, to yourself? It doesn't necessarily have to be expressed to anybody else. But when was the last time that you spoke in a loving way to yourself? I know for any of you watching that have either been clients or have come to any of the workshops, that I have a saying about be kind with what you find. And so often when we're doing work about self-awareness or reflection or genuinely just looking inwards to see what's going on up here, is that so often people will realise that they're not necessarily kind towards themselves. They don't necessarily speak to themselves in a kind, loving way. And that isn't unusual, sadly. And I've said on so many occasions, put this scenario out, and I'm sure I've said it on one of the other confidence conversations actually, is that if you heard if you heard an adult speaking to a child the way that you speak to yourself about yourself, would you think they were being loving? Would you think that they were being kind? Because I'm just going by the response that I have of when I have this conversation with clients and in workshops, is that the majority of people would say that they would probably need to. I had some Americans recently that said they'd call the CPS, which I'm sure is the Child Protection Services or something. I've had people say they would call the police or Childline, or that they would intervene and separate the adult and the child. And that speaks volumes about love. So let's see before I plough into something else. So Becky's put, if loving yourself is not giving yourself a hard time, then I can't remember the last time. Exactly, Becky, and that is what I'm talking about. It's never giving yourself a hard time, whether you've eaten too much or not eaten too much, whether you've got flabby bits or whether you've got a perfect body shape, whether you are in a relationship or single, whether you've got enough money in the bank or not, whether your health is optimum or not, whether your relationships are the best thing on the planet or not. You know, we say, and I'm pretty sure that if I'd have spent time going through any of the card shops and really looking around the card shops, thank you for all the thumbs up, that I'm pretty sure that I would have been able to spot some of the cards that were talking about you complete me, or you accept me as I am, you love me with all my faults, all of those kinds of things. And it's fantastic when we can meet somebody and have that level of interaction. But I'm just wondering how many of us can have that level of interaction with ourselves. And I suppose I get a bit confused, if I'm honest, as to how can I love you 100% if I don't know what loving me is? How can I love you 100% with all what you might perceive as your faults and your quirks and your weirdiness and your baggage and all of that? How can I love you 100% if I don't even know what that love is myself? If I don't know how to be loving towards myself, how can I understand what that is to be loving towards somebody else? I'll give you a pause there whilst I have a sip of my tea. I'm very thirsty this evening. So what are your thoughts on that? Elisa says, having a job and running a business, my treat to myself is spending time alone and going for a walk and getting fresh air, the simple joys of life that we take for granted. And again, they're fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic things to do. I'm just wondering how you speak to yourself. I'm just wondering how you talk to yourself whilst you're running your business or in your job, or when you're trying to get the kids ready for school and they've lost a shoe, or you can't find you can't work out what to have for dinner that evening, or when things aren't going great, when the proverbial shit has hit the fan. What happens then? How do you speak to yourself then? Not how do you speak to others, but how do you speak to yourself? How loving and kind are you to yourself in those times? You know, don't get me wrong, I think it's fantastic to go and treat yourself to the box of Maltesers. I think it's fantastic to go and take yourself for a nice long walk and get some fresh air. You know, I treated myself and was loving to myself this evening and came home from work a little bit earlier so that rather than having a rushed dinner, I could sit and enjoy my dinner before I came on the call this evening. And not giving myself a hard time about it, not giving myself a hard time for leaving the office early, not giving myself a hard time about the fact that the washing up is still lurking out there, because then I decided to watch a bit of a TV programme, and just not giving myself a hard time. Actually talking to myself lovingly. You know, the old version of me, the fact that I fiddle with my hair so much, would have been beating myself up. You know, I shouldn't be fiddling with my hair. I should have got everything sorted. I didn't redo my makeup to come on Facebook Live. And, you know, really, the old version of me, that's kind of what I would have had on my shoulder. Now, I know, because I've spoken to it's got to be thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people in the last 11 years of being a coach. And I know I'm not on my own with this. I hear it time and time and time again of people saying, and I watch it in workshop that I did last week. I talk about the adult, if there was the adult talking to the child, what would you do? And I can see people welling up. I can see people getting upset. And all I'm doing is encouraging them to be nice to themselves, to be kind to themselves, to speak in a loving, gentle way to themselves. And yet so few people do. And the thing that baffles me at this time of year is that so many people want to celebrate and honour that other person in their life, whoever they may be, for being their Valentine and loving them wholeheartedly and unconditionally for who they are, and yet they can't do any of that for themselves. And I'm not negating and saying that there isn't a love of your life that does love you completely. My challenge is I bet you that person's not you. And I wonder what would happen if you were loving to yourself, if you spoke to yourself in a way that you would want a dear lover, a beautiful lover, whoever and whatever that means for you, that significant other in your life, how you want them to treat you. I just wonder what would happen if you spoke to yourself and treated yourself that way. So, what have we got here? Jane's saying, so true. Good evening, Jane. I've had negative self-talk most of my life. Learning to be kind and understanding for myself is something I'm getting better at. Though I am starting from a low point. Jane even, we've all got to start from somewhere. Now, I know that you know what my starting point was, and thankfully, I think my starting point was a lot lower than yours. So, and that I don't mean that in a competitive way. But sadly, you're not on your own. You know, I know that you've been to one of my workshops, and I know that you've seen the hand raised with people saying that how they speak to themselves. It's unfortunately a human condition. It's part of what the thinking brain does, and it's just not resourceful. It's not kind. It's not considerate, and yet we expect ourselves to change. We expect ourselves to feel good, and when we don't, when we kind of have that emptiness, that hollowness, that we perceive it's because there's love missing, and then we perceive that we are unlovable. We look for somebody outside of ourselves to fill that hole and tell us, no, we are loved, and we love them right back. But as long as we're playing each other's game, as long as we're playing each other's rules of I'll love you, and this is so, we don't realise this, and I'm sorry for those of you who are parents, you're probably not going to like me for saying this, but so many of us will say I love you, and expect it back, or to be said back, or to be shown back in some way, shape or form. And we do have unwritten conditions going on. You know, I will love you as long as. I will love you as long as you fulfill my needs. I will love you as long as you meet my conditionings. Because if love was a constant, if love was something that never changed, we would never, in the middle of an argument, and I know I've certainly done this, said to somebody I love them, and then in the middle of an argument turn around and told them how much I hate them for what they've just done. Well, how can love be there one second and hate be there the next? You know, that we need to look at this and start to look at it for ourselves, because my belief is that when we can, and this is still a work in progress for myself, is that when we can genuinely be loving and kind to ourselves and connect and relate to ourselves in that way, then think of the kind of relationships we can have then. Think of how, if that hole that we've already got around love is already filled by ourselves, imagine how genuinely, unconditionally we can interact with somebody else, and we can genuinely and wholeheartedly love regardless of how they are with us. Let me just have a quick look, because there are a few things. Sorry, Jules, this is so off topic, but my hamster is absolutely mesmerised by your voice. Think he's my Valentine. Marvellous. Thank you very much, Becky. Talking down on myself has created stress, heart palpitations over the years. I thought it could do. I couldn't do certain things and would avoid doing it. I've now learned to be much more positive about myself, and it has made me feel different in how I go about things. Alyssa, that's fantastic, and I think it's that, you know, there are so many levels as to how we talk to ourselves. And it's not just how we talk to ourselves of, I can do this, I've got this, you know, I can handle it, all of that kind of stuff. It's genuinely looking at, how do you talk about yourself to yourself? Yeah, I know that you did that, but It's not an easy thing to really dig into, but the more that you can be aware of, what is going on here and how are you talking to yourself, that's going to help you have an even deeper and even more intimate relationship with yourself. And I think personally, when you've got that with yourself, you can have an even deeper, even more connected relationship with those around you, be those intimate partners or be those family members, friends, even work colleagues, believe it or not. That's my view. Tan, hi Tan. I have a hard time telling myself what I'm doing is good enough. Instead, I criticize myself for not being better and pressure myself to be better. Right now, it is piano accompaniments for my program on Thursday. Good enough has to be a thing. I cannot get perfect by Thursday. So Tan, let me ask you to ask your brain to define perfection. What is perfection? What is perfection? What would that perfect piano accomplishment look like? Now I'm going to make an assumption that the brain's going to come back and say something along the lines of not making any mistakes, getting it absolutely correct and perfect. Well, imagine that it was a 6-year-old that was playing the piano and that they had somebody stood over them the whole time going, get it right, get it right, get it right, you have to get it right, you have to get it right, you have to be perfect, you have to be perfect. If that child listens to that person, how is that child going to be playing? Now, they still could get all the notes correctly. They still could play a perfect accompaniment in the sense of not making any mistakes. But how much are they going to enjoy that? How relaxed are they going to feel? Rather than giving yourself that permission to play the piano from a relaxed place, or it doesn't matter whether it's the piano, or whether it's doing public speaking, whether it's doing a presentation, going for an interview, pitching yourself for a job, whatever it may be. If you've got that internal voice that's standing over you going, I've got to do this, I have to do it in this way. Yes, you still may be able to do the thing, but it's kind of like you're doing it from a place of, I've had a number of colleagues actually that have come on and sneakily watched my videos without saying hi. I don't think any of them are sneakily on here this evening, unless I can't see. And so often I've had them say to me about, do I script these out? No. Why don't I spend more time doing my hair so I don't fiddle with it? How do I just talk for this amount of time with not knowing where the conversation is going to go? Doesn't it stress you out? All of those kinds of things. And from my perspective, as long as you have an idea of what it is that you want to share, I have an idea, I have an intention behind the videos. So that's why I have a topic to start off with, and my aim is to get into conversation with you to see where it goes so that I can best support you from wherever you're at right now in the short amount of time and in the limitations that this forum provides. But if I was to be with a script, can you imagine if I had a script, I would probably have my head down unless I put the auto cue, which I do have one of those apps. I could put that there, but then I'm going to be slightly off. And it'll have like pause, now read comments, and go in and read the comments. And it would be far more restricted, far more tense. And therefore, I'm not going to be able to express and interact with you in the way that I enjoy. And my assumption, Tan, is that you would probably like to enjoy playing the accompaniment and enjoy playing the piano. And I wonder what that would be like if you spoke to yourself lovingly about it. Does that make sense, Tan? Give me some thumbs up or some love-ins or whatever if that does make sense. Or, of course, if you want to put any more comments down there, then please do. There's lots of hearts and all of that going along at the moment. So I can't see your picture, Tan. It looks like it might be a beautiful animal, but I can't really see. And Becky's put, I find good enough really hard. So I would thank you for coming thick and fast. So let's talk about good enough then. if you are telling yourself that you are not good enough, how is that? Tan says it makes sense. Thank you, my lovely. Oops. My picture is a laughing horse. Oh, Ace! I could see it was my assumption is it wasn't a human, just the way that it was, but I couldn't quite get, because it's tiny, I can't really see it. I'll have a proper look later. So, good enough. What is good enough? See, good enough can only exist with a comparison to something else, right? So if I say that I'm not good enough to climb a tree, then I have to be comparing myself to either somebody else that can climb a tree, or my perception of my skills of climbing a tree. And also, where does that measurement stop? You know, what is good enough to climb a tree? Is it that it's the speed that I'm talking about? Is it whether I get to the top and break loads of branches? Is it that I managed to get to the first? What rules are in place to make something good enough? And do you know, this is interesting. I will share this with you. Excuse me, I'm going to wobble the camera because I keep smiling as I'm talking about love. I'm going to show you what I can see. So opposite me is what some of my friends call my wall of fame. And on there are a number of photos of various people in my life that I adore, including my goddaughter, who is about 16 months old, maybe a little bit older than that now. I'll have to work that out. January, February, March. Hang on. November, December, January, February. No, yeah, 16 months. I got that correct. Wow. My granddad, who's 99 years old, and various friends, niece, nephew, my mum and dad, and some travels, my dear friend Marie and Shani. And I know that to the best of their ability from where they're at, that all of those people love me. And I know to the best of my ability of what I know love is, that I love them. And I know that pretty much, I'm scanning to double check, I think, before I make this statement, I think pretty much every single one of them, that if I said to them, am I good enough as a human being? Pretty much every single one of them would say yes. Or, bearing in mind that some of them are a bit scientific minded as well, they would probably ask for clarification. What do you mean by that? What is good enough? And I pretty much guarantee that there are people in your life that would say the same. So, and be that one person and be that a laughing horse, Tan. But I pretty much guarantee that this is something that comes up over and over again about not being good enough. And my invitation to you would be to start lovingly challenge it. To ask, when you hear your brain say, well, I'm not good enough to do whatever, is start to challenge it. What does it mean by that? How does it know? What is it comparing itself to? What's it trying to stop itself from doing, and why? But do that really lovingly. It's not about abusing it or beating you up about it, but just do it lovingly. Becky says, my whole persona is give it everything you've got and get it right, or don't bother. No half-hearted. And that needs fixing, as it's impossible standard to maintain, but where to begin? By having a go. Give yourself permission to make mistakes. Let's face it, it's very rare that the majority of us on here would be having a go at something that we're going to put ourselves or somebody else's life at risk or in danger. Or that we are going to lose all of our finances and our financial stability, whatever level that may be. It's very rare that people put themselves into that kind of position. And my assumption is, and as I do know some of you on here, you're not that kind of a person. So I wonder what you could learn, Becky, by allowing yourself to have the space to have a go. To just have a go. What is the one thing? Here you go. Here's an offering for you. Write down a list of all the things that you know that you would love to have a go of or at, that you know that you've been stopping because you think that you can't get it right, so therefore you've stopped yourself. And I'm going to challenge you to look for one of those things. Doesn't matter, just one. Make it the most simplest, easiest one that you want to, and give yourself the permission to go, okay, let me look at this, and walk yourself through the worst case scenario. Just in your mind. Imagine that you've had a go, but it has gone completely pear-shaped. Everything about it has gone south, whatever, it's the worst case scenario. But instead of just going, oh my God, and kind of ignoring it, invite yourself to walk into that and go, okay, well, if that happened, how would I deal with it? If the worst case scenario happened and I got it wrong, which is obviously I didn't get it right, what would you do? How would you deal with that scenario? And then once you've gone through that, and write it all out, write the whole thing out. And when you've gone through that, then invite yourself to go through the best case scenario. And think, okay, well, what if it goes really well? And write out all of what you would do if it goes 100% right. Or even just right. And then just let it go. And then when the time is right, have a go at it and see what happens. But you see, you can't be being loving to yourself. And if I loop this right the way back to where we started about being loving and being loving to a child, my assumption is, for those of you who are on here that are parents, is that you pretty much, and I'm saying this because pretty much most parents I know that I've asked this question to will answer in a certain way, which is basically, if your child wants to do something, you'll look for a way to support them, to help them do it to the best of their ability, and maybe even beyond. And you'll encourage them. And we've done that. We do that as parents from the moment a child starts to walk or learn to walk. I love getting videos from my friend Shani and my goddaughter, and I will get these videos, and she's learning to walk, or was learning to walk. She now is walking. And when she was calling, I can hear all of the adults in the room and even her big brother going, yay, woo, cheering her on. Well, why do we stop doing that? I don't mean that we have to walk around whooping and hollering and all of that with each other, but just even internally. I once saw an amazing speaker called Amanda Gore, and she used to say, no matter if you've done something, no matter how big or small, if it's something that you're like, it's like me the other day. I cooked some dishes I'd not cooked before, and they tasted really nice. And after I'd done them all, I just went, ta-da! And that was Amanda's thing, is just to go, ta-da! Look at me, I did those things, it's great. Were they perfect? No. Were they good enough? Yeah. They tasted good enough to me. But am I going to get a Michelin star for my cooking? I very much doubt it. But I'm not going to I'm done giving myself a hard time. I am so done giving myself a hard time. What's the point? Look, my hair doesn't need to be cut, it's just been cut. But it needs to be washed, it's a mop. I didn't put any makeup on. I'm not going to give myself a hard time. It is what it is. I haven't got my best outfits on because I wasn't seeing clients today, so therefore I've got different stuff on. I'm not going to give myself a hard time. So why are you? You wouldn't do that to other people. So why are you doing it to yourself? Come on. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about you genuinely being loving to you. Doesn't mean buying yourself stuff. Doesn't mean treating yourself to the bath or the walk. They're great. Don't get me wrong, they are great. But it's up here. It's what's going on up here and how you're talking to yourself. That's my challenge. That's my offering to you, is to be loving to you. And that's why I wanted to talk about love. Because I do genuinely think it's extremely important for us not to walk around saying I love myself, but to at least walk around giving yourself the opportunity to be loving to yourself. Because I personally believe that's important. So, and there's lots of hearts coming in, perfect timing, Alyssa. So, Any last thoughts or questions that you would love to share? Thank you, Jane. It is a great idea. I'm assuming you mean the worst case scenario and best case scenario. It's not mine. It is something I've been doing for a really, really long time. And it's something that I personally think makes a big difference, because our brain is then immediately resourced to go, well, if the shit does hit the proverbial fan, then I've already got the resources to deal with it. And I've walked through that process with people who were facing losing a partner to death. And I've walked through it with people who are facing potential redundancies, other loss of jobs, all sorts of different situations. And it just makes the brain realise that it has the opportunity to do something about it. We're not passive in this life. We have the opportunity to be able to do something. And that's a great starting point, that exercise. It's a very simple one. All I would say is make sure that you write it down, or you're talking it out with somebody else. It has to be one or other, both if possible, but at least one. So if you're doing it for yourself, make sure you write it down. So, as per, I've gone over, sorry. I believe that next week is as per usual. I know I've got a couple coming up in March that I will have to change to the Tuesday, but keep your eyes on here, or if you're on the mailing list, which if you're not, you can go to juleswyman.com. Let me put that on there right now. Jules Wyman, no, not that one, that's a different email address. Thank you for all the hearts and loves and likes, because it does make a big difference to the way it's viewed and watched. You can go to juleswyman.com. If you're not on the mailing list, you can sign up for the 7 Keys of Confidence on that page, which will then put you on the mailing list. And if you have specific things that you would like to have as one of the confidence conversations, then please do let me know. Also, just a reminder, I have got 2 events coming up in York. One is on the Saturday the 4th of March at 3:30. I will, after I get off here, I'll post the links they are on the Confidence Garden page, but I'll post them on here again. The one on the 4th is at 3:30 till 5 o'clock. It's an introduction to the truth about confidence. And then the following Sunday, the 12th, is the full day, the truth about confidence. So I know that tickets are selling for both of those, and I'm pretty sure they're going to sell out like they did last year. So even if you have to get on a train or get in a car, Becky, I'm looking at you, or Laura, or anybody else. Tan, I don't know where you are, so I can't invite you. I don't know if you're in this country. I'm trying to be mesmerising and get you to come. But yes, you're welcome. I deliberately do them at the weekends so that you can either come up and spend a weekend in the beautiful city of York, or you can get there and back in the day. It's not the venues, neither of the venues are very far from the station in York, so it makes it easily accessible for anybody. And if you have any questions about the events, then please do let me know. And in the meantime, I'm going to finish there. I need to go and get a drink. I'm extremely thirsty this evening. And I wish you well, and I wish you love, and I wish you loving, and may you be loving to yourself. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care. Bye.